and welcome back to the Eclectic Pop-cast. My name is Britt. So happy to have you here to listen to this. So, what are we all here for? I'm going to talk about the curious case of Natalia Grace. This is a docu-series that is streaming on Max, and after hearing so many people seeing so many people on YouTube talking about it, I decided it was time to watch. And so it's 6 episodes. They fly by really quickly. Watched it with my mom. Had a lot of thoughts. So it's great when you get to watch something with someone else because you're immediately getting that feedback when you look over and go, is this, am I crazy or is this crazy? And they look back at you with it is. So it is the craziest documentary I think I've ever seen. And the reason that the creator that pushed me over to want to see it was Stephanie Harlowe. I watched the very beginning of her coverage. She has a 3-part coverage, and I only watched like the first 5 minutes of her video because I thought I have to see this for myself, because she had compared it to Tiger King, and that was an insanely great, the first season. Second season was all right, but the first season was the craziest documentary I think I've ever seen, and it was so good. So just lot to watch there. So I had heard about this case when it broke when they were first arrested. So I've been following along since then. And the way the media has portrayed it is as if we just don't know. We just don't know the answers. We're never going to know how old Natalia Grace is. And, well, folks, we actually do know how old she is. And we 100% can confirm that she was a child at the time that she was living with the Barnetts. Their claims can be completely debunked. Unfortunately, and if you watch a lot of true crime, you know that our legal system needs quite a few tweaks. And in this case, the prosecution they ended up having the charge about her being an abandoned child thrown out, and because they said they couldn't relitigate another judge's decision because he had made the decision to age her up. She was really 8 years old, and he said, yeah, she's 22. And so since he put his stamp on it, it's immutable. And that is incredibly scary and should be incredibly scary to many people, that science, doctors, they were able to prove how old she is. So we've got doctors proving this, and we also have later an investigation to find her biological mother that ends up resulting in, again, irrefutable proof, given her mother's own age, that backs up that Natalia was in fact a child when she was abandoned in an apartment. And I cannot even imagine. I can't imagine being, even if she was, as Michael Barnett continues to pontificate about in the documentary, and he is a character that is so, I don't even know how to describe him. I've never seen anyone like him before in my life. I've met some people, and different, obviously, people, but there's something, I don't know what is going on with this guy. He has to reenact every single thing that happened in his life by actually doing it and or doing imitations of the person that he's talking to. These reenactments. And then, on top of that, what he's saying absolutely makes no sense. This is a man who would insist that he saw Bigfoot, and Bigfoot came home with him for a while, and he ended up robbing him blind, and he would tell it with a great deal of passion. He'd do an imitation of Bigfoot, I'm sure. He probably asked his second wife, to bring out a fur coat so that he could, do a really good impersonation or something. That's how crazy this man is. And as I'm listening to this, if I was even a teenage girl who was abandoned, and I don't have what Natalia is battling, I would not be able to physically take care of myself. And he has videos of him that he's proudly taken to back up his side of the story, where he is confronting this little girl about, and saying that she lies all the time. And you can just see the confusion on her face. She's been gaslit so much, she doesn't even know what reality is. And when the story went out and became viral, and people were speculating about it, and we were kind of led to believe, I feel, that what the Barnetts were saying might have held a shred of truth to it. There might be something here. Oh my goodness, this could be it, guys. Well, it's not it. And they have known the answers. This man finally went on trial with the reduced charge. But he did face charges for leaving an adult disabled person without proper assistance. And somehow, spoiler alert, if you don't want to know the ending of this, and I'll save you the. Obviously, I do think you should watch it, because it is something to behold. It needs to be watched. It has to be watched. But just to kind of give you an idea of what you're going in for, and I kind of knew this ahead of time. I'd heard he had been acquitted, and my jaw was on the floor, because take away everything else he's claimed, that she is not a child, that in the documentary, he says she could be 50 right now. Like, get out of here, dude. Are you out of your... Yeah, he is. I think he's out of his mind. But not in a way where he's actually out of his mind. He knows how to act in such a way that you might think that he is out of his mind, if that makes sense. Quite frankly, I think he thinks he's Jim Carrey. I think he feels like he's this expression-filled, non-discovered talent. My mom thinks he's going out for a reality show, which I honestly think is a very good theory for his behavior in this show. Why else would you be behaving in such a way? Because he does not comport himself in a way that someone's going to watch this and go, like, yeah, my, thank goodness, he's telling the truth. This is for real. Okay, so now to the spoilers. Man was acquitted. Man was found not guilty. Somehow a jury heard this. We did hear from the jury person. And her explanation as to why the jury arrived at that, because she said the judge had given them such strict instructions. They just didn't see it. They didn't see a guilty here, because their hands were tied behind their back so badly. And the lady said that she then, after she got home from finding this man not guilty, she did what anybody would do. Start an investigation online. And where do you start that investigation? With the Dr. Phil show. I mean, that is where the truth is going to lie. You're going to find out this man has discovered so many truths. So she watched that. And in that Dr. Phil episode, Natalia Grace and her new adoptive family are interviewed. And after watching that and doing a little more research, she did come to the conclusion that Natalia was a child at the time she was abandoned. I feel so bad for this person. Not the juror. I feel bad for Natalia. She has been cloaked in sort of the way she's been presented in the media has been in this manner that maybe with a villain, there could be a villain. There's a villainous overtone. Okay, maybe it's an undertone, but of her being potentially what the Barnetts are saying that she is, and that she's some kind of con artist grifter. The plot line, ladies and gentlemen, out and everyone else, that is in Orphan, a very well-known, if you watch movies, and he says very interesting, and they did not seize upon it, which was frustrating, but he brags to the documentarians that they were a movie family. They were a movie family, the best time of his life, and he cries for the millionth time, that eating popcorn because he brought his popcorn machine. I guess that's the only thing his wife left him in the divorce. And his wife, Christine, who he is divorced from and who, along with him, participated in this absolute horrible, just disgusting behavior of what they did to Natalia. And what he admits to is so disgusting. And then he gets on this thing about how his wife mistreated him, as if he is the real victim. No, you're not. No, you're not. You need to take more than a couple seats. This man needs to be on the floor. He doesn't deserve a seat. Oh God, it's so disgusting. He is vile. His wife is vile. I'm going to stop there with that. But it's just, I don't know how he got a second wife. I'd really like to have heard the story there. I mean, what she heard from this man, I mean, it was amazing he got one woman to marry him, but we learned that he's got a second one. Meanwhile, I'm over here single. I mean, this is insane. But nevertheless, what happened in Natalia, there is no mystery here. It's been confirmed. She was not a con artist grifter from Eastern Europe. It's absurd. Also, okay, so back to the we're a movie family, where he bragged about that. Yeah, you are a movie family, Michael. That's how you came up with the plot line to say that Natalia was the real life Orphan, which is a very popular, for genre people, horror film that stars Vera Farmiga and Isabel Fuhrman and Peter Sarsgaard. Yeah, Sarsgaard. And it's a very, very good movie, okay? It's a very, very good movie. It's very good. So no wonder it kind of stuck out to him. This is allowing for the thought that he has good sense and what a good movie is. And this man shows me that he has no sense in pretty much anything. Oh, it's so nauseating when he is with his lawyers and he starts doing impressions of, should I be like this or should I be like this? And he starts going through different ranges of smile. Who does that? I've seen I watch a lot of true crime. I've watched a lot of defendants prepare for trial. I have never seen a defendant behaving in the way that he does. It's startling. Goodness gracious, this man. He also claims he's broke, and he is going around in a convertible Mazda. Clearly you're not super broke. And we don't know what he did for a living. What was he doing where he's bragging that he has a 5,000 square foot house? It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling this kind of person can be successful in the world. And so that leads us to the fact that, another spoiler alert, after Michael Barnett is found not guilty by a court, and he proclaims, by the way, that the jury went right back and they immediately knew the truth. They knew that he was innocent. And dude, you were found not guilty. It's not you were found innocent. Let's get the two not confused, okay? You're found not guilty. So people can think that you did something and feel their hands are tied and they can't pronounce the verdict. And these people are apparently running pretty strict on what it was going to take to be guilty. I wish we had more juries like that, but I mean, this was an overwhelming case against Michael Barnett. And for him to be found not guilty and see other people found guilty on a fingertip of the evidence that this man had at his trial is just, oh my goodness. It's so infuriating. It's so infuriating. But I will give it to his lawyer. His lawyer said it's all going to come down to who he picked to be on that jury, and he was right. He picked the right jury, someone who was going to be willing to take their minds places no one has been before. Hopefully will never be again. Speaking of which, actually, I did hope they were going to have to go there again, but not to find someone else not guilty in this. But as we learn, the charges against Christine Barnett were later dismissed for lack of evidence. And you always continue with a case. There was more than enough evidence here. You just had a very stubborn jury, in my opinion. I don't think seeing video of it would have been, and having 100% proof, and it was going to be hard to, but you get my idea. I really worry about why I feel people should watch this, and people are going to say, is it just because you want to see this man acting absolutely inappropriate? No. The reason is because I think this story illustrates that even in 2023, the disabled in our country are not being treated like other able-bodied people. And it is horrifying. The tonality of how Natalia, who is a little person who suffered from tremendously painful, her legs were turned in. I don't know how to describe it without you seeing a picture, but the little girl, she could not stand up straight, okay? She could not, her legs were not straight. It looked incredible. It looked incredibly painful. And you have video after video of Michael and Christine Barnett mocking this disabled person. Even if they believe she was Methuselah and she was 1,000 years old, if the person is disabled in your midst, you do not question the fact that they assert they are feeling pain and they need to sit down and they need rest. This is disgusting. And he does that in these videos, and so does his wife. There's no excuse for that. Absolutely not. Why? And the reason she was lying about being in pain was so she wouldn't continue to stick her little head up against a wall and think about what she had done. I'm stunned that this family was able to adopt this person. That's another thing I want to point out here. The adoption, apparently there's such a desperation to place children that this horrible husband and wife were able to adopt Natalia when there were people who very much wanted to adopt her and didn't find it fiscally possible, who should have been given the money from taxpayers to help in whatever that they needed to do so that they could have come alongside Natalia and taken care of her. I don't think a lot of people would have been outraged to know that their money was going to help place this little person who is struggling. My God. I mean, the callousness of some people. And we heard from another facet of this documentary is you hear from the neighbors who lived in the complex that Natalia was living in. And she found herself lonely, and she went up to people and tried to make friends and played with some of the neighborhood kids, and they start using words like she was creepy, she was a nuisance. Oh, one woman says she was a pest. She smeared Natalia on the show, even though she could know and do research and be better educated and know that none of what she was saying was true. That, in fact, she was behaving like any other child would. First of all, if you live in a neighborhood where there are other kids and you're a kid living in that house, that other little kid is going to be coming over to your house as much as humanly possible. They're going to be knocking on the door and asking, oh, are you guys home? Especially if they come from a troubled background. They're going to want to escape to your house to spend time where they feel more comfort, more safety, happier. That's just normal. And they try to make something so creepy out of it because they believe she was an adult. Oh, okay. Anybody with a BS detector should have been able to know that was absolutely incorrect. They say that she could carry on conversations. I have talked to children the age of Natalia actually was when she was abandoned in the apartment complex. And you're talking to a kid. This ain't a Hallmark movie where they've been given lines and they sound super educated. It sound like they're getting ready to go off to Harvard. They talk like normal kids where the conversation skills are not quite there yet. The ability to talk about a wide range of subjects, the ability to even describe their day is, quite frankly, not really there for them yet and accessible to them. For them to claim that Natalia was able to convince them that they were talking with a 22-year-old, I don't know what 22-year-old they're hanging out with, but I had serious questions. Almost everyone in that complex should be ashamed of themselves. I feel for the one lady, her and her husband went on and talked at length. The husband, and what I wanted the documentary to do is let these people say their piece, whatever, and then confront them with just 3. It's a very quick thing to confront them with 3 main evidence points that Natalia was a disabled little person and a child. And let's see how they contextualize the information that they gave. I think it would offer a different window of which to see it. And quite frankly, there's only so far I can go. The one woman, by the way, is a retiree. She had plenty of time to spend with Natalia, clearly spent a lot of time with Natalia, but there was a limit for what she felt like she should be able to do. And poor Natalia at some point, I'm not condoning it, but the lady left her house unlocked, and so Natalia went in and helped herself. She was starving because her absolute crappy adoptive parents she'd ran out of food. So this is just desperation. Wouldn't you be wondering, wow, this child was so desperate, or if giving them the benefit of the doubt, they thought this was an adult, that this person was over in your refrigerator, that would tell me she doesn't have a full refrigerator for herself. Because let me tell you something. This little person walking is, I'm sure, an agony, physical agony. Why would she come over to your house and help herself to whatever was inside there if she had a full refrigerator in her home that she could have just walked across the living room to go and get? Why would she subject herself to walking all the way to your apartment and having to make her way in there? It's just so illogical. But they're very defensive of themselves, and they feel, quite frankly, the air that they put on is that they are a victim. Like, I'm a victim too. What we went through having to have Natalia in the community was just, it was so awful, and I'm still recovering. Like, shut up. You're not suffering. You're fine. You're okay. Trust me, you're okay. And God bless that the women who ended up stepping forward and trying to help Natalia. The one lady who had the many cats and dogs, and I think she said she was considering adopting a 5th child. So I'm not sure if she's a foster mom. If she is, she's a rock star of a foster mom, and those kids are very blessed to have her in the system. If she is a foster mom, those kids are very blessed to have her in the system, because I'm sure she's a tremendous blessing. What she had to say about Natalia, and she went to court and she testified against Michael Barnett. She was really hoping that she would be able to testify against Christine Barnett, but didn't happen. Just such a... I've seen many cases, and as I've said, watch a lot of true crime, where injustice has occurred, and it's a very bitter, awful feeling. It's very sour. And for me, it stays with me until I can come to grips with it. This was an injustice. And unfortunately, the media is continuing to do an injustice to Natalia in the way that they continue to cover this case. I'm very happy to see that Stephanie Harlowe's multi-part series on the case has got so many views. I'm hoping that can correct the record where Natalia and the truth lie, and people can see that and learn more. I haven't seen all of Stephanie, her presentation, but I'm sure, as always, it's very well done. She's a very detailed researcher, and I'm actually going to watch her 3-parter because I'm curious. There were questions still that the documentary didn't answer. Like something as simple as, what did this guy do for a living? Okay? Oh, and by the way, there was a neighbor in their first neighborhood, where the one that Natalia came home to, and a lady who was wearing a, I guess you call it a 4th of July dress. Anyway, she basically tries to say that she was living next door to a murderer. What? Because Michael Barnett said he was living in fear of Natalia. And as one of Natalia's prospective adoptive parents, and she wanted to adopt Natalia. She's a little person, and she actually has the same form of dwarfism that Natalia has. And she called total BS on this claim. That they were physically intimidated by Natalia. I've been around kids who are pretty rambunctious, and a child who is not have any disabilities, fully abled child, and I wasn't scared that, and I'm very short. I'm 5 feet tall, and I felt like I could take them on. So I'm not. I mean, anyway, bottom line is, this man is a monster. I am very sad that he is out. I'm very sad that there seems to be no angle to go at him again with. So, for lack of a better term, he's just gotten off scot-free. There's no hope. And I feel really bad for Natalia that he has been able to poison so much of the well against her. Glad she's in a very happy adoptive family now, and being able to speak the truth to Dr. Phil, anyway, I hope people watch the documentary. What it did was turn around. They followed the story, followed the facts where it led them. Fact is, this man is an absolute liar, and so is his wife. I don't know. I'm going to have to look it up. Did the prosecution maintain the right to refile the charges against Christine Barnett, or did they dismiss them? I'm going to look here and see what happened to her. Unfortunately, she's free. And the author of The Spark, A Mother's Story of Nurturing Genius and Autism. This lady is just... I will only agree with Michael Barnett that she is a psycho. I can't disagree with him there, and she's very evil. I hope Natalia, by the way, is getting a lot of counseling and therapy. She has a lot to unpack from her time with the Barnetts. A lot of ill treatment, for lack of the term that apparently... Anyway, ill treatment that she, and I think it obviously goes beyond that. She has a lot to work through. I don't feel like she has even been able to conceptualize the fact that she was so awfully treated. And that's not normal, and it's not okay, and it's not right, and it's horrible. It was very sad to hear that that she tried to wave at Michael, and Michael is just, because he's so filled with rage because this person destroyed his life. If she doesn't come into the picture, he'll tell you in the first episode, he'd still have his marriage, he'd still have his house, he'd still have... dude, you didn't need freaking 4 cars in the driveway. And what the heck was in the garage that you couldn't move at least 2 of those cars into your garage? I'm sure there was hoarding. I'm sure there was things bought that weren't necessary. I mean, if he's going to get a popcorn machine, I'm not talking about the popcorn machine you go to Bed Bath & Beyond and get. I'm talking about an actual... By the way, it was very dirty. I would never eat popcorn out of that thing. I don't care if he gave it to me. Things needs to be very sanitized. It looked like he had not cleaned it since he'd first got it or whatever. And as for Jacob, the son, he had there's a hot mic moment with him where they catch something inadvertently, and it's very telling about what was going on within the sibling dynamic and the parental dynamic, and it's quite disturbing. So, final thoughts. The Curious Case of Natalia Grace is streaming on Max, and you definitely will want to watch it. It says here, and I'll link to the story down below. This is very scary. It says that, and this article was written on June 5th. It's from Your Tango, and it says the headline reads, Christine Barnett defends her parenting and calls out men hitting on her after pictures shown in The Curious Case of Natalia Grace. Oh, God, this woman. Are you serious? I very much doubt she's getting hit on a lot. I'm just going to kind of leave it there. But I'm reading down in the article. By the way, this all happened in Indiana, which most people know for the Hoosiers, with Gene Hackman. And unfortunately, now know about these 2 psychos who live there. It says that the Barnetts, and the docuseries, she's living in Florida. Okay. That's very disappointing. She's taken to Facebook to defend herself. Oh, ladies, just stop. Oh, and I'll just read a quick excerpt from her Facebook. I do feel I was the only one who really saw Natalia as a capable, beautiful human being inside of the package I was presented and what she was going through. She then goes on to say that she was struggling with identity for who knows how many reasons, and it even made her violent. Ma'am, if you were doing anything that you were doing, it would turn any child violent, quote-unquote violent, just trying to protect themselves. She is so awful. And then she tries to school people about how this is a story about the sadness of how dwarfism is being portrayed. You and your husband portrayed her that way purposely, leaning into a bias and prejudice that exists in this society against little people and anybody with a disability as a villainous or suspicious person. One of the reasons I have never watched The Fugitive with Harrison Ford, and just want to point out Captain Hook, that was a character who had lost a limb. He's a villain though. So you see kind of, if you really start thinking about it, you will see that there is definitely where the media and media in general helps lean people towards. I've seen children make the most awful comments ever to people who are struggling with disfigurement, being disabled, and they know what they're doing, and they're just terrible children they're just born that way. They're terrible children. And what are you going to do? They go up to someone, say something cruel, callous. I can't imagine what Natalia must have gone through, and her parents never protected her from that. She is just terrible. Goodness. I think what we're going to end up seeing is that probably a rival documentary down the line with Christine Barnett. I'm guessing she's aiming towards a Netflix docuseries. When she learned this wasn't going to be on Netflix, man, can you imagine if this man is as unhinged as he is in this documentary? How unhinged must the individual who decided to hitch their ride to this man, decided to marry this man and procreate 3 times and then adopt another child, how unhinged must she be? I can't even imagine. And her whining, as is always, it's so interesting when the victimizer tries to become the victim. That's always a very interesting thing. I came into this docuseries with a very open mind. I've watched both Orphans, Orphan 1 and Orphan 2. Very familiar with that storyline. Very much felt from the beginning that they used and weaponized that story they just basically scripted it, lifted the script, and then put poor Natalia in the lead role as Esther. God, these people. They're just so awful. And what gets awful is when you watch movies and TV, for the most part, and there are movies that can depart from this trend, but for the most part, they tend to give people a satisfying ending to their emotional investment in a story. And here, there is a happy ending that Natalia is being loved and cared for. I see that the family, the man's legally adopted Natalia in 2016. That's wonderful. It's been 7 years. She's still living. She's still with them. And Michael claimed that Natalia's true personality basically showed up overnight. So apparently someone's not having a struggle being around her and any of the issues. By the way, if you have already watched this show, I would really urge you to watch there's a 48 hours, and I'm going to try to go to their YouTube channel right now. I know it's on their YouTube channel. There's a 48 hours episode that documents a story about two children who were adopted from Russia, and they end up living with a family. I think the people were in their early 30s. Nevertheless, they ended up sending the little girl back to Russia. And by saying they flew her over there, and 48 hours had back in the day followed the story, and they had, oh goodness, sorry about that. 48 hours had followed the story back in the day, and the guy who had reported on it was so disturbed, which is understandable, by the case that he did in fact cover, that he wanted to know what happened to this girl, because the girl was, these people were the original Barnetts. They took her over to Russia. It's called What Happened to the Perfect Child, And the reporter is Troy Roberts, a really great reporter. And he had been haunted by this story. And so he goes and he finds where she is now. She was taken over to Russia and left in a mental hospital. Let that sink in for a moment. She's a little girl. She'd been in America. She goes, they didn't tell her, oh, we're never going to be back to pick you up. They made it sound like it was only a temporary arrangement. And there was nothing temporary about it. So she's abandoned in a Russian mental institution. So I'll watch the 48 hours out there. The aim of the episode is what happened to the perfect child. These parents also claimed that this girl was schizophrenic and she was trying to kill the little Russian boy they had adopted alongside her, who wasn't her biological brother, but they were, adopted in unison. And they claimed that she had tried to kill him and that she was doing stuff to them. Well, it was just all a bunch of BS. They just wanted to unload her, and it's awful. When you have a child biologically, that's a choice that you need to stick to for the rest of that child's life, and you have a duty to that child. And the same thing goes for adoption. It's no different. And legally, in the eyes of the law, I will remind everyone that it is, in the eyes of the law, they're your child just as much. You're just as equally responsible for them, accountable to them, as with a biological child. So that is a very disturbing 48 hours, but it's definitely worth a watch. And he does, in fact, find the girl who was taken to the mental institution and finds out what happened to her and how her life is now. Very interesting to hear from her. She was obviously inside of that dysfunction. I'm going to watch Stephanie Harlowe's coverage of this case and wish Natalia Grace well. I think she's probably Natalia Manns now, so I don't know why they say Natalia Grace, but she has a new last name. Anyway, I wish her well. I think she has unfortunately just been completely mischaracterized by the media, and they need to take accountability for the part they played in that. And please know, if you watch the miniseries, you will have answers. This is not going to be something where you're wondering what if anything. So anyway, thank you for listening. I know this was long. I went on longer than I anticipated. I might end up cutting some chunks out of this. But thanks for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day. And thanks for listening again. All right. Chewy, anything you want to say? He says thank you. All right. Bye.